China is not a democracy, it's a totalitarian system. And this is not a criticism, this is the reality. The people in head of the Chinese Communist Party admit to this, and in fact, they're very proud of this. And because of this, they can pretty much do whatever they want. Like the people on Twitter say, my private company can do whatever it wants. Well, my private China can do whatever it wants as well. And from any type of system that they could have used in order to get the population to be under their control, they have decided to use the social credit system. A system that was initially criticized by the Western media, but recently you don't hear people talk very much about it. And they probably don't talk very much about it because the West is heading to a similar system, except that the system in the West is not being forced upon people by the government. It just happens a lot more naturally with social media companies, NGOs, and activists collaborating with each other in order to make this a possibility. And in a funny way, I actually think that the Chinese system is better than what I predict the West is heading towards. Because at least in the Chinese system, A, you know the rules, and B, there are ways that you can improve your score, there are ways you can find redemption, and there are ways that you can rehabilitate yourself. While in the West, if you're someone like, I don't know, Alex Jones, I suppose, you can be terminated from social media and you're never going to have that redemption. You're never going to be able to come back. And this, of course, can affect your public image. It can affect your job propositions. It can affect you trying to apply to certain universities. And the list goes on and on. So the West is more like that episode from Black Mirror, where you have this system where everyone is connected and people rate each other. And based on the number of stars that you get, based on the rating that you have as a human being, you gain access to certain facilities or you lose access from certain others. So if you have a high credit score, then you can join a couple of segregated neighborhoods where the creme de la creme exists. You can join maybe some schools. You get access to loans. You can manage to travel with discounts, or you can get access to expensive cars. And the lower the number you have, the lower the star rating, then the less likely you are to get these things. And if the number goes way down, you can even get arrested. Now, in Black Mirror, you have citizens voting on each other. So this encourages people to be incredibly fake. Smiling towards people, trying to avoid conflict, pretending to be friends when they're really not, just trying to fish for that extra rating, to fish for that extra star. And this seems to be what the West is moving towards. However, in China, that's not the case because people do not rate other people. It's the government that decides what your social credit score is. Now, the way it works is that everyone gets 1,000 points from the beginning, and this is still in the beta phase, so I don't know how it's going to be when the system is fully rolled out. Like, for example, I don't know when you get those 1,000 points. Is it when you get 18? I know that the parents are being responsible for what their children do for a long period of time. So if the kid does something bad, then the points get deducted from the parent. But I don't know if the kid has points themselves in order to risk losing. What I do know is that everyone starts off at 1,000 points, and there are different tier systems. So the first one is the people that get over 1,050 plus points. So these are considered to be the exceptional members of society. These are going to be on posters, their faces are going to be in the newspapers, and people are going to be encouraged to behave more like them. And this is the AAA to the AA tier. And there is no difference between AAA and AA. It's just, I suppose it's to encourage people that are already AA to try and become AAA. But the bonuses seem to be the same for people in this tier. And one of the most important bonuses that they get is health priority. Now, I couldn't really find what this actually means, but I assume that if you go to a hospital and there is not enough medication for everyone, maybe if you have like the exact same condition as someone else, then the doctor is going to prioritize the people with the AAA over someone that's from B, for example. But it's very interesting. So if you want health priority, you need to stay in this tier. Then you go into the A plus, A minus tier. And this is anywhere between 960 to 1,029 points. Now, again, there is no difference between an A minus and an A plus, but I guess it's just like an incentive for you to constantly try and better yourself in order to go from A minus to A and then A plus. These are the people that get school priority. So if you want your kid to attend a very prestigious and well-renowned school, then you need to be into this category, because if you're a B, you might not get the ability to send your kid to that school. And this is so antithetical to communism, by the way. Like, a lot of people will say, well, China is not real communism, even though they call themselves the Chinese Communist Party. And I guess it's the socialists that look at the results rather than what the government promised during the revolution. So during the revolution, the promise was that you're going to get communism, you're going to get equality. But already we see that the citizens are being separated into class systems. So you now have castes. You have the desirables, and then you have the people that are on the middle line, and then you have the undesirables, the untouchables, like in the India caste system. What's also interesting is that they already admit that some schools are better than others, when clearly, according to communism ideology, all schools should be the same. All schools should be just as good. It wouldn't matter if you send your kid to one school or another. But, well, here we go. We now have a meritocratic system where anyone has the ability, I suppose, to get into the AAA category, and anyone has the ability to get into the D category. So it's up to you, if you want to follow the rules and manage to become a model citizen or not. Now we go down to the B tier, and the B tier are people who are 850 to 959 points. And the interesting thing is that you are stuck in this position for 2 years. If you got your points all the way down to 850, well, even if you manage to climb back up and you go to the 959, you will not be able to go to 960 until 2 years pass. So this is pretty much like, I suppose, how YouTube likes to call it, the limited state phase, where you're not really a troublemaker, but you're starting to get there. And what's interesting is that now you get visits from Chinese officials that are going to at least try to work with you in order for you to improve. Like, they want you to get into that A plus category. They want you to be better. But it's up to you if you want to listen to them or not. Now, if you're still naughty, you can go to C tier. Now, C tier is 600 to 8,409 points. And now you're getting into real trouble. Now you're going to get government inspections that are going to be more frequent. You're going to be put on a list that is not going to be available to the public, but other government officials are going to be aware about that list. And you're going to have a more difficult time getting credit. You're going to have a more difficult time getting access to certain luxuries. People around you are going to know that you're a troublemaker. But again, like, the government will try to send inspections, and they're going to try to send officials in order to help you out, in order to try to get you on the right path of being a good communist. And finally, we have the D tier. And the D tier is everywhere between 0 to 599 points. And you're going to be stuck in this place for at least 5 years. So even if you somehow manage to farm above 599 points, you will not pass that threshold until 5 years have elapsed. I don't know what happens to those points, by the way. Like, let's say you're 599 and you manage to get 100. So technically that should put you at 699. I don't know if, like, after 5 years, those points are added to you again, because I think they might, in order to incentivize people who are in this category to work to improve themselves. But yeah, I mean, again, this system is still in beta phases when I'm making the video, so a lot of things can change. But this is the national blacklist. Like, this is the worst place you can be off, because not only is your face, your name, and what you did going to be made public, but you're going to be made as an example for other people. So now everyone is going to know that if they don't follow the rules, and if they don't manage to keep their points above a certain level, they can end up like you. And trust me, it's not a very good place to be, because all of a sudden, all of the government grants and funds can be terminated. And we're not only talking about things like a scholarship. No. We're talking also about subsidies, like also stuff that poor people get. Like all of the funds that you get from the government can be potentially terminated. So it depends from a case to case if the government wants to terminate that or not. Your job can also be affected, so they can fire you from your job if you're at this point. They can kick you out from your house if you're at this point. The government has the ability to take away your credentials. So let's say that you studied at the university and you got a diploma. Well, the government can say that diploma is null now and it's void, like they can take it away from you. And in a way, I can see this happening in the West in the future. Like, let's say someone that's problematic ends up in a newspaper. A lot of people are condemning him, and now he's getting canceled culture. Well, the worst that can happen is, let's say the banks don't want to do business with this person anymore, so their credit cards are going to be terminated. They're not going to be able to find a job, and because of that, they can't pay for their rent, and they can't pay for the utilities, so they end up getting kicked out. And it's the same thing, but like, at least in China, these people who have the D category, they can still try and work to improve. Like, there is still a path of redemption. You can still try to talk with a government official in order to work your way in regaining the citizen trust, I suppose. You can also have the ability to know at least what the rules are, so that you do not just happen to one day break them without even knowing what you did. Because the company just decided to change their terms of service, they can go for something you did 5 or 6 years in the past. But anyway, right, I digress. What I did want to point out, though, how you manage to gain and how you manage to lose these points. Because from what I noticed, it's very, very difficult to gain points, but it's very easy to lose points. And I guess, like, there's different categories here. You have things that you would encourage people to be a good citizen. So, for example, finding a lost wallet and returning it to the authorities, well, that gives you points. Managing to solve a dispute between neighbors, that gives you points. So let's say, like a couple of drunk neighbors go out and they create a scene and everyone in your neighborhood is scared. And you manage to go there and diplomatically handle the situation, or, at least restrain one of them until the cops arrive. Okay, well, you get points for that. And if you manage to win a national award, you get points. If your kid, let's say, manages to get an award for being the best at the high school football team, you get points. If your kid enrolls in the military, I believe you get points. Most of these points, though, they're like quite low. We're talking about anything between 5 to 10 points. You manage to get a lot of points, though, if you donate an organ. So if you give, I guess, like your kidney to someone that needs it, you get 100 points. You don't get money for it, but hey, 100 points, right? If you do something of great worthiness and it's published in a newspaper, you get 100 points. So let's say you save a kid from drowning, or you do something really kind that really touches people's hearts and you're worthy of given prestige, then yeah, you get 100 points. But these are like very difficult to accomplish and very rare. The best way to get points, it seems, to rat on your neighbor, pretty much. Be a good informant for the Chinese Communist Party and outroot dissent, or you're pointing out to people that are not trustworthy, then you're going to get like 5 or 10 points. And that's pretty much how you gain points. Well, how you lose points, that's a lot easier. So you lose, I believe, 100 points for tax evasion. You lose points if you find money on the street and decide to keep it. Take into account that China, I believe, has around 2 million cameras. It's just a lot of cameras. So they will probably notice that stuff. You get points deducted for traffic violations, parking violations. Even if you speed like a little bit over the limit, again, 2 million cameras, you get points deducted for that. You get points deducted for posting misinformation online. Misinformation is obviously whatever the Chinese party believes is not true. You get points deducted for posting bad news online. So even if you're posting something that's sad, like even if it's true, but it gives people the gloomies, well, you can get points deducted. And again, like when you gain points, it's usually like 5 or 10. For some of these, you can even lose up to 50 points. And here's one that's really interesting. Like, this one really made me smile because there's a huge similarity with the West. You lose points for apologizing. And I find this fascinating because Western culture used to be a guilt culture. So a guilt culture is that when you do something bad, you're supposed to feel guilty. And it's supposed to eat you out from the inside. And you go to the person that you know you did something wrong to and you apologize. If the person accepts your apology, then you're fine as long as you never do it again. So the way it works is through introspection. Like, every person needs to be conscientious of what they did wrong, self-reflect on it, then they apologize, and if the person accepts their apology, they should never do it again. Asian cultures, and China specifically, is a shame culture. A shame culture is that when someone does something wrong, they are required to make a public apology. By doing the public apology, they show that they're not trustworthy. It kind of takes away the guilt from the group and it puts it on the guy. It's the scapegoat type of apologizing. And this happens a lot when a company makes a bad decision. They will look inside and find out who is the person responsible for that decision. They put him up to make an apology, and after the apology, that person will lose points. It depends on the type of apology. So if it's just like in front of a company and it doesn't go into a newspaper, I believe it's 5 points. If it does go into a local newspaper, it's 10 points. If it's in a bigger newspaper, so national-wide, it can be 20 points. It's basically like just how many people talk about it, like how public the scandal becomes. Again, it's very difficult not to make comparisons with the West. People end up making an apology only to get fired later. It is definitely like the system that we're going to. And finally, if you're someone like me who is thinking, well, okay, if I'm in the AAA plus category, I got a lot of points. So I can misbehave a little bit. Like, maybe I can nick some money if I find it off the street. You know, maybe I can speed a little bit, or maybe I can do some things and it's fine, because, like, worst that can happen, I go from AAA to AA. At any point, the government officials can put you into D category. Like, they can just ignore the system altogether, because this system is not designed as legislation. It's more likely designed to incentivize people to behave in a certain way. So, like, for example, if there's a protest going outside, do you really want to join it, considering that there's 2 million cameras with face recognition that are tracing people? And, you know, even if you have like a AAA score and you're going to go, well, you know, worst that can happen is they deduct 100 points. No, they can just put you in the D category. Again, this is theoretical. Like, I don't know if they're doing it or not, but it can happen. And alternatively, they can just imprison you altogether. I mean, this system is more designed for thought crimes and thought policing. Actual crimes, you can still get sentenced and sent to prison. You can still be sent to a labor camp or something, right? So this is just trying to get people to think the proper way and to act the proper way, and also to be informants on the state. So when you see someone like a VTuber who by accident shows Taiwan on her screen by showing her YouTube algorithms, and then you see a lot of Chinese people getting offended over that, chances are a lot of them are just trying to raise their points. Because if they support the correct cause, if they say the correct things online, then what ends up happening is that they're going to get points for their good behavior. And you're going to see a lot of Western companies suddenly being pressured by what seems to be like a grassroots movement because they offended the Chinese people. And, you know, like, they're demanding that a certain game be removed from GOG simply because it insults the president, Xi or whatever. That might also be artificially created. Like, most of these people probably don't even play that game. They probably don't even know what that game is about. All they know is that, hey, you need to put pressure on this company because you might raise your point. And if you raise your points, you might send your kid to a good school. It's very similar to how it used to be in my country whenever the communist leader would go on the street and everyone was forced to clap. Like, they didn't clap because they wanted to. They clapped in order to keep their jobs. They clapped in order to make sure that they're in the good graces of the party. So I expect more Chinese activism to happen whenever a Western company, or maybe in the future a YouTuber like me for making one of these videos, will get pressured and downvoted and throttled because the people who do this, they have a incentive, which is not personal, it's just business. You know, they don't hate me, they don't care about me, it's just business for them. It's like, oh, this is how I can get an extra 5 points on my score. It's a very interesting system that I think it might be rolled out in the future on social media in the West. They might be like, okay, well, if you manage to flag a lot of videos that are going to be taken down, maybe you're going to get some brownie points. Maybe you're going to get some, extra cred on Facebook or on Twitter if you manage to report a lot of hate speech. I can definitely see it happen. But anyway, let me know what you think of this video, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. Sorry for uploading so late, but it did take a while in order to get this information. And if you find it interesting, please share it around. And I would be very interested if you're an actual Chinese person commenting on how accurate I was. Because a lot of this information is difficult to come by. A lot of it is translated with Google Translate. So if I'm wrong here or there, please do let me know.